Yeah. This is the Legacy League. Tell me what will your legacy be? Yeah.
The quarterfinals are set in Rhode Island. We're down to 8 teams, and dare I say, the best 8 teams during the entire regular season are getting ready to face off. Coming up, we're going to break down the first round and how we got to these 8 teams, and then these quarterfinal matchups, like I already teased. I'm excited, and I guess don't get excited easily because I've seen a lot of these games, but some really, really good matchups, some good stuff to talk about, and we'll have our 2 analysts here make some picks for these quarterfinal matchups coming up next week. Welcome to the first round postgame show. We also have a surprise in between coming up. I did some win-loss either-or records, and then we can try to figure out what exactly that means, but I'll preview that more in a second. Guys, let's break down this first round, which saw really one game. No, it did see one game finish within single digits, and that was the 8-9 matchup, so I guess we could have expected that. The lone upset, and I do the air quotes, upset, was the All-Waves, the 10 seed taking down the 7 seed Providence defense. There was one game difference between those two teams in the regular season. A 7-10 usually isn't an upset when we talk about March Madness, but it is the All-Waves that advance and defeat Providence defense. And then it was the halfway crooks and Air Mambas taking care of business as the 5 and 6 seeds. Let's start with the Road Dogs and All Talk Sports, a game that Road Dogs won the first quarter, really took it to them in the second quarter, kind of built a lead. And then it was All Talk Sports kind of storming back a little bit and making it a little interesting there for a second in classic Road Dog fashion, it seems like. Kind of, if you remember back to kind of the middle chunk of that season, unable to really finish a team. But the Road Dogs win, survive in advance, as they say. We'll go to Kyler first on this one. We're going to kind of go a little more quickly through these so we can spend more of our time previewing the round of 8. Kyler, Road Dogs, get it done. Kareem Cooper, 30 and 4. Effective shooting for him, 82%. Rion Watts, 17, 9 assists, 7 steals, 7 rebounds. A classic Rion game, hitting threes. I noticed from the highlights 3 of 6, which when he's doing that and then he can attack and set everyone up, he really kept his team going. Shaq Argy with 17 and 7. We got a big game from Justin Bianchi and Thomas DeAndrea, 22 and 8 respectively. They went 10 of 25 from 3. All Talk did, where the Road Dogs only went 5 of 24. I'll be quiet now, Kyler. What was the difference in this one, and what can the Road Dogs do as they get ready to take on Lob City in a 1-8 matchup next week?
Yeah, the difference, looking at the stats, it had to be turnovers and steals this game. Just watching it, I thought that the Road Dogs would be the team that out-rebounded All Talk Sports, but that wasn't the case at all. Road Dogs only had 30 rebounds compared to the All Talk Sports' 42. But the key metric was just 5 turnovers for the Road Dogs and 15 steals. That those possession swaps, they don't need a rebound. They can just get the ball earlier and score quick points. And that's a lot of Kareem Cooper's 30 points were on the fast break, those quick dumps. And so that's what led them to win.
They'll need all of that against Lob City, a team that also likes to turn you over and get easy ones. I would say that turnover margin kind of evens out the rebounding disparity, right? 42 to 30 isn't crazy, but All Talk definitely won that rebounding category. And then they had just as many, more turnovers than the Road Dogs did. So kind of cancels that out. And then when, both teams shot well from 2, I guess it really was the turnovers because All Talk made, twice as many threes, and yet it was the Road Dogs with their defense, and, they're able to hold off All Talk Sports, snap the winning streak for All Talk Sports, and like we talked about, advance to take on Lob City. More about the Road Dogs and All Talk Sports in our middle section coming up. So we'll talk about every team in that middle section, which is great. But this ends All Talk Sports season, a playoff loss. And in the 2 games that were more likely to kind of go either way, which I'll get to Matt in a second on this one, it's funny, the Air Mambas, who we're going to talk about, and the Road Dogs, not even the Air Mambas, sorry, wow. all Waves and Road Dogs, two teams who have been here before. So take it for what it's worth. Playing two newer teams, Providence Defense and All Talk Sports, their first time in the playoffs. Not that it's their first time playing basketball. I say it all the time. It's just different. There's not a clear reason I can give you. The rules are funky. Weird stuff happens. Teams always seem to come back. But it was the All Waves. Let's get to them now. The All Waves as the 10 seed advancing and getting ready to take on the Game Breakers. But first, they had to take care of Providence Defense. That was extremely loud. I apologize. The All Waves take care of Providence Defense 79-58. Let me get that box score up here. It was Josh DePino with 20 and Terrence Gallo stuffing the stat sheet 20, 16, and 6 for him. Just attacking the basket, doing Terrence Gallo things. Providence defense, Jesus Thames 9 of 15. So kind of a typical game from him, 19 and 11 from him. Jeffrey Sims 14 and 7. 4 of 16 from 3. It felt like it for Providence defense. There were stretches, Matt, where they couldn't score. And that's kind of the easiest way to put it. There wasn't a really big margin except for, I guess, the third and fourth quarters where it was the All Waves kind of able to pull away. But not a huge difference, Matt, just like those stretches where it was so much easier for the All Waves to score, even though they only had 4 guys compared to Providence defense.
I thought I clicked the unmute button there, but I just thought All Waves played a lot better team ball. They had 4 guys shooting in double figures. They also shot the ball at 60% compared to Providence's defense's 47%. And when the All Waves are playing that well, it's very hard to beat them. I also thought I forgot how to pronounce his name, Ashtetter, I think it is. I thought his presence in the game was huge this week. He made a big force down in the paint with some heavy dunks. He was angry at the rim all day and made a lot of big plays on defense. He also reminds me a lot of maybe like Steven Adams. He's kind of just running into a brick wall out there, very hard to get past in the paint. And I thought his overall presence really helped them get a victory.
And shout out to Providence defense, who kind of has been really rolling into these playoffs and would have been an interesting matchup for the Game Breakers, but now it's the All Waves who are an interesting matchup because of those bigger size players that Matt talked about, right? Jake Ashtetter, great pronunciation, good job. Jawan Gamble, who wasn't even there and has really been able to stretch the floor and protect the rim. And then Nick Montanino, who also plays down low. And the offensive spacing when they had that game where it was Nick Montanino and, Jawan Gamble, I think, at that point. But Nick and Jake, the spacing is what they need to figure out, because the Game Breakers are going to score. They have their spacing down, and they're going to hit threes. But they're going to need that size to protect the rim, right? And so it's going to be a give and take for the All Waves. Those two teams haven't played. We're going to preview it more in a second, while the other 3 quarterfinal matchups have faced off, and we have some kind of data to go off of, which is great. But in this one, Providence defense, their season comes to an end. 4 of 16 from 3 really stands out to me, that basically even in the rebounding, even on the offensive glass, both teams had 7 steals. It was just stretches of offensive inabilities for Providence defense that unfortunately caught up with them against the All Waves. So it is the All Waves, the 10 seed, advancing. And like I talked about, 2 teams who have been here, with players who have been here. I don't think that was the difference in either of these games, but it's funny how it's kind of those 2 teams with the experience do advance. All right, we'll keep it moving. And let's get to the Air Mambas, who have a very interesting matchup coming up. But first, they had to take care of Velocity. All right, I turned it down a little bit. Hopefully not as loud. It is the Air Mambas taking care of Velocity. Like I talked about, 111-59. They jumped out early. Nick Lemoyne, 25 and 13. Luis Ramirez, 22 and 6. They had 5 players in double figures. And 6 of 18 from 3. They were kind of going through the motions. Velocity, 29 for Ashton Alcock. Lance McKenzie, 24 and 14 rebounds, 9 assists, almost a triple-double for him. 7 of 33 from 3. So we talked about with some of these teams trying to get upsets, and this is going to be a theme as we talk about the quarterfinals. 21% from 3 isn't going to do it if you're, let's say the Halfway Crooks, who have been extremely hot from deep. If you're the Air Mambas, who advanced and are now taking on the Skyhawks, who we expect to shoot it well. heck, if you're the All Waves, right? And if you're all of the underdogs need to shoot in the 40s from three to make up for some of the other inefficiencies that they may have on the floor to kind of keep these games interesting in a one-and-done playoff. Kyler, the Air Mambas, we're going to get to their, win-loss and either-or game record. They were in that game with Lob City. They were in that game with the Halfway Crooks. They've been right there, and now they get a 3-6 matchup with the Skyhawks coming up. What are you taking from this one against Velocity that you expect them to kind of build on as they get ready for the Skyhawks?
Yeah, so this game, look, Velocity doesn't play great defense. We've seen it all season. So this was a chance for Air Mambas to have a lot of uncontested threes, easy shots, and they still only went 6 for 18. Now, that's not terrible by any means, but I'm looking back to their last game against the Skyhawks. What really killed them was they couldn't hit the threes. So if they're going to win this game, which they definitely can, they have the talent to, they're going to have to shoot really good from three and not necessarily 6 for 18, or I think it was 3 for 27 their first time they played the Skyhawks.
I was going to say that. Yeah, 3 for 27. So that cannot happen and most likely won't happen again, but they're going to need to be significantly better. It can't just not happen again. They need to make, let's be optimistic. Close to 50% of their threes is always the goal to have a good chance to win. And any team that shoots, 50% from three and takes a ton will have a good chance to win. So like we talked about, the Air Mambas, the 6 seed, take care of business. They advance. Let's get to our last game here, as it is the Halfway Crooks, the 5 seed, just missing the bye by a game or two, but get into play in the first round against the Muffin Tops, and they advance as well. It is the Halfway Crooks 127, the Muffin Tops 76. I'll list off some stats really quick. Jared Hansen with a triple-double, 39, 14 assists, and 12 rebounds. 21 threes for the Halfway Crooks, shooting 47.7% from three. So, that needs to continue, as the Halfway Crooks, the 5 seed, will now advance to take on the 4 seed Washed Up Boys, who they did play all the way back in week 1, and we'll get to that game in a second when we preview the quarterfinals. Matt, the Muffin Tops, Matthew Dagnall led the way, 21-10, but the Halfway Crooks and no Charles Correa, who we talked about made a ton of threes his last 2 games. He'll be back. Jeff Winchell, I will break the news, not that it's breaking news. He'll be ready for next week. So, a full 6, a whole bunch of subs for the Halfway Crooks. But what do they need to do, and what did you see, in the first round, Matt, that they can continue in the quarterfinals?
I think it's all about defense, really. They're playing a very talented and deep washed-up boys team who they're not filled with a ton of stars, but they have a lot of guys who can play well, and if they can get their matchups right and play good defense on certain key players on washed-up boys like Leroy and Hendel, they can definitely find a way to victory. Also, just hitting the shots. They were hitting the shots last game against the Muffin Tops, so if they can keep up that success from three, I think they can definitely have a good matchup against the washed-up boys and give them a really good dogfight.
And we will do more previewing of those quarterfinals. 4 really, really good matchups taking place on Monday and Tuesday night. Live on YouTube as well, youtube.com/legacyleagues. You can watch all the games or come on down to the Oakland Beach Boys and Girls Club, watch them in person. It'll be good. It'll be worth being there in person. I'm sure some other teams will be there, and the teams playing before and after. The playoffs are intense, and so people there in the gym definitely helps. Let's get to some win-losses and either-or records and see what the hell it means, because I honestly don't know, and so I'll read them to you guys in a second, but let's see if it might translate to how you guys predict some things come playoff time. All right, a segment that may or may not work, and then we'll do picks for the quarterfinals, but there's always those games where, like, the Halfway Crooks are a perfect example, right? Let's get it out of the way. If you're doing wins, like losses in either-or games, so games that they could have lost but won, or games that maybe a team could have won but ended up losing, right? The Halfway Crooks finished 5-3, and their win-loss either-or record was 1-2-5. So that's 5 games, and I'm biased, but like Washed Up Boys, the Road Dogs game, All Waves, All Talk in Overtime, and the Air Mambas are the 5 games where the Halfway Crooks could have went either way. And they ended up losing one of those 5 games to the Washed Up Boys, right? So what does that mean? Well, they could easily be 2-6, or you can do the inverse of this. They do it in the NFL a lot, right? Where it's like the team is 6-2, but they really are playing more like a 4-4 team, right? And so, let me list these off, and then you guys can kind of go in whatever direction you'd like. And I don't know what this means. So Lob City undefeated. They were 5-0-3. With their 3 either-or games being the Game Breakers by 4, the Air Mambas overtime game, and their Providence defense game in Week 8 is just still not, I don't know what the hell happened. That was like a weird game. Providence defense had 3 guys. They had a chance to cut it to 1. Providence defense did at the end of that game. It was like people were going through the motions, and then holy crap, who knows? So that's an either-or game, but that's not what this is about. So 5-0-3. The Game Breakers were 7-1. They were 7-0-1 with their one either-or game, in my opinion, the game they lost to Lob City by 4. The Skyhawks, the 3 seed, are 7-1 through the regular season. They were 6-1-1. And I even have a maybe here where they're one either-or game, because they lost the game to the Game Breakers that first week, right, by 40. And so you can almost throw that out. They haven't lost since, so for what that's worth. And their one either-or game that they did win was maybe the All Waves in Week 2. It was like a 10-ish point game. That's even maybe a stretch. So the Skyhawks maybe could be like a true 7-1. We talked about, let's get to the Washed Up Boys, 6-2. They were 2-1-5. So that's why I'm really interested for your guys' picks when the Halfway Crooks take on the Washed Up Boys. 2 teams that have been in games, played each other already. I'm excited for this matchup. But they are 2-1-5 with the Washed Up Boys 5 either-or games being the Halfway Crooks in Week 1. All Talk Sports played them close. The Road Dogs and Providence Defense, all games they won. And then they lost to the Game Breakers, which was also an either-or game. We talked about the Halfway Crooks. The Air Mambas, one of those teams that we are kind of used to being in all these close games, they were 2-2-4. So they lost to Lob in overtime, the All Waves game, the loss to the Road Dogs, and the loss to the Halfway Crooks. So really, in their either-or games, the Air Mambas only won one of them. So they're 3-5, but really, I hate doing the shoulda, coulda, woulda thing, but could easily be 5-3, could be 4-4. So that's going to be a fun matchup against the Skyhawks, a team that's right there as a 6 seed. Providence defense, 2-2-4. They're 4 either-or games against the All Waves, All Talk Sports, Washed Up Boys. They played them close, and then that weird Lob City game in Week 8. The Road Dogs, who do take on Lob City, are 2-3-3. So another one of those teams that have been in these games. The Halfway Crooks, the Washed Up Boys, 2 games they lost, and they beat the Air Mambas in a game that came down to the wire. Then we'll do the last 2. All Talk Sports, 2-2-4. Their 4 either-or games were against the Washed Up Boys, Providence Defense, their overtime loss to the Halfway Crooks, and against the All Waves in Week 8. And the All Waves, who advanced as a 10 seed, are, in my opinion, 1-2-5. So there you go. They could easily be 4-4 as well, and maybe that's why they advanced. Again, there's no direct relation, but their 5 either-or games, their win against Providence Defense in the regular season, the close game to the Skyhawks, which they lost, the Halfway Crooks game, the Air Mambas game, and All Talk Sports, which they lost. The last 4 of those, Skyhawks, Crooks, Mambas, and All Talk Sports. The last 2 there's no either-or games, so we can kind of leave them out of this conversation, unfortunately, but kind of even focusing on that. So that's a lot of me talking. Kyler, I didn't send you this information, so good luck. But what stands out kind of just going through that as you were hearing some of the either-or games in these teams' records?
Yeah, the Game Breakers, Lob City, and Skyhawks really stand out to me the most. I think that's part of the reason why I picked Game Breakers to win the whole thing is they've won, and they've won big pretty much every single time they've won. So seven wins and 1 either-or, and their either-or was their loss against Lob City. Skyhawks, I would have said their overtime win over Washed Up Boys would have been a either-or game. So,
Duh. Sorry, you're right. A million percent, yeah.
Yeah, so the Skyhawks have had some games that they just barely won. Lob City's had a bunch of games that they just barely won. So even though the Game Breakers have a loss, their other 7 games they've been so dominant that I think that bodes well for them looking into this playoffs, where you're going to need to have that quality of being able to insert yourself and assert yourself against good teams.
And all I will say, 1,000,000% agree with a lot of that. The playoffs are different, and I say that all the time, in a good way, in a bad way, in every which way. You guys will see, which I'm very excited for, specifically Lob City, the Game Breakers, who have turned it on at times. So you've seen flashes, especially Lob City. You've seen flashes. You will see from the jump, the Skyhawks, I'm sure as well, the Halfway Crooks. Like, you'll see just a different intensity because it is the playoffs, but specifically a team like Lob City with those 3 either-or games like you're talking about. They don't lead. They've lost in the playoffs, so this is not like they're undefeated forever in the playoffs, but you'll just see a difference. You'll be like, oh, this is what this team could have done the whole year if they tried, right? Now, they may win this week, they may win the whole thing, they could lose in the finals. That is, the difference in the playoffs with some of these teams. Matt, what stands out kind of from, any of the teams that I talked about?
Just like the fact that there's so many teams that had at least 4 or 5 maybe win or loss games, and just like you said, it's the playoffs, and anything can really happen coming into this week, and that whoever comes to play is going to come out with the win, I think. And just a lot of these teams are very evenly talented, and I think it comes down to depth too, plays a huge part in just being conditioned, but I wouldn't be surprised if we get some big upsets coming in this week.
And so even like I talked about, totally, the all waves, right? Being in a lot of those close games, maybe being a little better than a 2-6 record. And sure, they were playing Providence defense, who was 3-5 themselves, and they were in a ton of close games, right? As we get to kind of preview some of these quarterfinals, let's do it. And we're going to move a little quickly here. But the Halfway Crooks with a ton of either-or games, the Washed Up Boys with 5 either-or games, and those 2 teams face off. So we'll start there because that is a Monday night game, and let's preview these quarterfinal matchups and make these guys make some picks. All right, the quarterfinals, I teased it. We'll go to Matt first. Halfway Crooks and the Washed Up Boys in our 5-4 matchup. Again, these teams met in week 1. It was 70-61 Washed Up Boys, thanks to a 29-21 advantage in the fourth quarter. So a tied game or a 1-point game heading into the fourth quarter, and it was all Washed Up Boys in that fourth quarter. They were a new team. The Halfway Crooks are still trying to, have figured some stuff out, but both teams playing way better than they did in week 1. Matt, what's your pick for this one and why?
This is definitely going to be a tough pick to have because I think, personally, for me, this is probably going to be the closest game all week and the game to really watch. But sorry, Joe, I think I might have to go with Washed Up Boys. Just because when that team is fully healthy, they've got a lot of good players. They play very good team ball together, and they shoot the ball very well. They always score at a very high field goal percentage. They're, from what I see, a very paint-dominant team, and if they can attack the paint well and be successful there, it's going to be tough for you guys, but I think it's going to be a very good matchup. They also play very, very hard defense, and coming in late into the game, they've had 5 maybe or maybe not games where they could have won or lost, but when it came down to it, they've made that play to get them the win on both sides of the ball. So you're going to have to go up with the Washed Up Boys here.
Their shooting has definitely improved, and they shot it well in that week 1 game. 43% from 3, but they've picked that up. Hendler roll has continued, and so, no one was ready for that, him being a new player to the league. So now there's some things both teams will be more ready for. Kyler, who you got in this one? Halfway Crooks and Washed Up Boys.
Yeah, I got the Halfway Crooks in this one. Look, I think what we've seen so far in these playoffs is that experience really matters. And maybe the Washed Up Boys have been playing with their all-out all game, and I think that the Halfway Crooks still have another level that they can reach in the playoffs. I think if they get Jeff Winchell back, if Dom's there, Jared Hansen's out there, I think there's a lot of star power and a lot of people who know how to play really good team ball, and that's going to propel them to win this game when they've been so good in close games this year.
The Washed Up Boys are a very good team. I'm not going to pick against my own team, but that's not what I'm trying to do here. It's going to be a good game. A lot of the matchups are very good. Paint dominance by the Washed Up Boys. The Halfway Crooks like to shoot it. They have some, rim protection in Jeff Winchell, Dom Langston, right? It'll be a good one. So it's fitting that there's a split on that one. I like it. Let's get to the other Monday night game currently, actually on the same side of the bracket. So it's funny how that worked out. It is the top-seeded Lob City making their playoff debut for this season, but they've been in the playoffs, deep into the playoffs a ton, as we've talked about, taking on the 8-seeded Road Dogs. We'll go to Kyler first on this one. These teams quickly played in week 4. It was Lob City 75-56, beating the Road Dogs thanks to a 23-9 first quarter. So it was Lob City that kind of jumped out and then was able to maintain throughout the entire game and defeat the Road Dogs. The Road Dogs, with not as many players now in the past couple weeks, have figured out some of their roles. They have kind of relied on a Kareem Cooper, Del Butler, Shaq Ardrey, Anthony Lyons will hopefully be back, who wasn't there in their first round game against All Talk Sports. Kyler, who you got? Road Dogs, Lob City.
I'm going to go Lob City in this one. And I think they win big, but it feels closer than that. The problem with Road Dogs this season is they can't seem to play a complete game, and Lob City does pretty much every single time. So I wouldn't be surprised if, again, 3 of the quarters are very close, and then one of the quarters Lob City really just pulls away, and that's where the difference is this time.
All right, 1 vote for Lob City. Matt, who you got?
I'm going to have to go with Kyler on this one, too, and pretty much for the same exact reasons. Just they're playing Lob City, who's been tough all year. They played every game completely. Even when they've had close games, they've come out with a finish. And the Road Dogs always battle, it seems, but even though it seems like it's a very close game, you take a look at the score. Sometimes it could be a double-digit deficit that they're facing, even though it feels like it's super, super close. But I still wouldn't count the Road Dogs out at all in this matchup just because of the way they play and how hard they can play, but still got to go with Lob City here.
I'm glad I made him make a pick because the classic hedge, I'm not counting him out. So at least he's not totally wrong. But no, 2 picks for Lob City. And it's funny, a similar version of both of these teams played in the winter. They played in the regular season very close in the Road Dogs' first time in, and we got to the playoffs, and it was Lob City who kind of turned it up and won by double digits. It wasn't a complete blowout, very similar to kind of what we saw in the regular season matchup this season between these two teams, where kind of Lob City just built a lead and maintained and was able to hold off any of the runs from the Road Dogs. You don't want to get behind to Lob City, right? That goes for any team, but especially a team like Lob City. So for the Road Dogs, it's going to be coming out and playing how they've been playing recently from the beginning, the entire time, and trying to keep pace against the defending champs. All right, let's go to 7 o'clock on Tuesday. The other side of the bracket, we have the 3-seeded Skyhawks and the 6-seed Air Mambas. These teams previously played in the regular season in week 3. So a lot of these matchups, the 3 that have played previously, all from earlier in the year. So it'll be different, and I'm curious to see what will be the same. It was the Skyhawks winning 77-62 in week 3, thanks to a big second quarter 19-8. We already touched on it, the poor shooting. And we don't like to usually be dramatic like that, but 3 of 27 for the Air Mambas in a game like that is not good, is poor shooting from deep. We don't expect that this time. We'll go the other way. Matt, Air Mambas, Skyhawks, who do you got?
I'm going to go with the Skyhawks here just because they've been on an absolute tear lately. They play fast. They play well together. They're a very good chemistry team. It feels like everyone kind of knows their role on that team. And I just love the way they play, too. I think they're a very tough team to beat in this league, and I got to go with them. I think it'll be a close game, though, just because the Air Mambas have been shooting the ball well and just been playing good team ball. But when it comes to the chemistry part, I just think the Skyhawks are a lot more put together and just seem like they've been playing together a lot longer.
And I'll sneak this in now before I forget. And I said this to the Air Mambas, so I am not breaking news here. The Air Mambas, to me, this version, have not yet done it in a close game, right? They get in close games, they're in the game, they have a slight lead. They haven't been able to seal the deal in a 1-possession game in the final 2 minutes, like make 2 plays, hit a couple free throws, and we win, right? And that's the hardest part of all of these games. And so they have to do that. The Skyhawks just did it. That was one of their questions, right? They're winners of 7 in a row. They haven't lost since week 1. They've kind of taken care of business and beat some teams, and it's like, now they have a huge matchup in week 8 and they win in overtime and make those plays to win. They make winning plays. So they just did it. Not that they're not going to do it every time, but it's a lot on the Air Mambas in a game that we expect to be close to come up and make those plays. Kyler, who you got in this one?
This one's tough because I'm picking against what I had just said earlier with experience versus a new team, but I am going to agree with Matt here and go with the Skyhawks. They're definitely the most fun team to watch out of all the teams, with their ability to make highlight plays but also just light it up from deep. So I think for that reason I'm going to go with the Skyhawks, but I think that the Air Mamas are going to be angry in this game, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of early fight. This game's close until the end.
Crap. I was trying to find the game, and I will talk through this, but I do not believe, and I'm getting there. So Zach Lawson played for the Air Mambas. I think he is a huge, from what we've seen when he's played, a good chunk of the game, I think he's one of the keys for the Air Mambas. In the game when they played, he had 3 points and 6 rebounds. But, they need to play through him a little bit because they kind of know what they're getting from Nick, hopefully, and he's been playing well. What they're getting from Aiden, he's been playing well. Lewis needs to continue to be there and make his presence known. And then Zach is kind of if they can get something from him, now we're doing something here against the Skyhawks team that we know can score. So 2 picks for the Skyhawks. No real upsets yet. One more chance. And I'm not sure if you guys will do it. Game Breakers, the 2 seed, we talked about it, taking care of business throughout the entire regular season. Get another team that's kind of made some noise in the playoffs a little bit. They won their first round matchup in the All Waves. They haven't played this year. I didn't do a ton of homework. I'm sure these teams in some version have played before. Some of these players used to be on the same team. And so, but I'll go back to Kyler. Game Breakers, All Waves. Who you got in this one?
Yeah, it's got to be the Game Breakers. If I said they're going to win the whole thing, I got to pick them in this game. I think the starting 4 of Hachi, Gian, Charles Alexander, and Jose Mercado is the best starting 4 out of any team in the league, and I think it would just be hard for the All Waves to keep up with that.
Matt?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with Kyler here. I got the Game Breakers in this one. They're just such a complete team, and every time they win, it's almost like it's a dominant showing from them. It's almost like the other team's never really in the game a lot of the time, so it's very hard to pick against them, and I just got to go with them in a big matchup like this.
And we will wrap up soon. I'm going to give both of you a chance to possibly change your finals picks if you want. Not that you will. I got some head nods already. That's fine. For the All Waves, what I will say is a recipe that could work to keep them in a game, and then you have to make plays down the stretch and do it for a full game. The bigger bodies they have need to be effective and mainly defensively help and be a force defensively. And then I think a Josh Tapina and a Jawan Gamble hitting some shots and creating offense. Terrence Gallo has been on a tear. Those players need to, against the Game Breakers defense that's very good, need to continue to do what they do. But stopping the Game Breakers at the rim will at least make them a little more one-dimensional. They're still very good at shooting threes, so that maybe isn't the one dimension you want to force them into, right, on a basketball court. But at least if you can take away something, that's kind of the key for a lot of these teams to pull an upset, right? Let's take away something. Let's make it hard for Joe Secator. Kavai may beat us, right? Cody Crawford may go off. Nuri Mahmoud may have a double-double, but let's make it hard for Secator. Noah James, he's not going to beat us, right? And in one game, you can kind of go in with that mindset. For the All Waves, let's not get beat at the rim. Let's keep Jose out there, right? Let's keep Charles Alexander away from the hoop as much as we can. Let's make him shoot threes. And if any team makes a ton of threes to bring it full circle on the postgame show, they're probably going to win anyway, right? So at least in a matchup like that, let's use our size and kind of turn these teams one-dimensional. That's the game plan coming in. That's much easier for us to talk about here on a Thursday night as we're doing the postgame show, compared to a Tuesday night when these teams are going to face off in the quarterfinals. All right, anybody changing finals picks? Are we all set? See you guys next week. Everyone's good to roll? All right, they're sticking with it. Postgame show will be back next week. 4 awesome games, 2 on Monday, 2 on Tuesday, always live on youtube.com/legacyleagues. Kyler and Matt, good job, and everybody, thanks for watching.